Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of IBL on Deck, sponsored by Rawlings. My name is Jackson Farrough. Great to be with you again for another episode as we sit down for another great conversation to talk some baseball. We're going to start our team-by-team series today, and we'll be starting with the current six-time-in-a-row champions of the Dominico Cup, the Barrie Baycats, talking with their Director of Player Procurement, Dante De Caria, who we'll get to in a moment. But first, last week, the IBL released its 2021 schedule. Begins on Thursday, June 3rd, as three matchups kick off the return of IBL baseball. And this season will mark the IBL's 102nd season. Now, each team will play a 36-game schedule. Weekends comprise a large majority of the schedule. 70% of the games will be played on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And as I mentioned, currently slated to start on June 3rd with the final regular season game scheduled for August 22nd. Now, the IBL Commissioner, John Kastner, said, quote, "This is, of course, tentative and based on a myriad of factors outside of our control, including vaccine availability, mass immunization rollout, and most importantly, restrictions and allowances based on the province's emergency orders." So while it is tentative at the moment, at least we do have a schedule in place for some baseball in the IBL in the future. And without further ado, let's bring in our guest for today's show. It's, as I mentioned, Barrie Baycats' Director of Player Procurement, Dante De Caria. Dante, thanks so much for joining us today.
Jackson, thanks for having me. An absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Well, I want to get to your career, the Barrie Baycats, of course, as well. But what exactly does your role as Director of Player Procurement for Barrie entail?
Well, I was just talking to you guys about it off mic, and it's kind of to take a little bit of pressure off General Manager and Field Manager Josh Matlow. Of course, Josh was appointed the role last fall, and he was doing a fantastic job. And in fact, about 80 or 85% of the roster is already put together. I already had a previous connection with the Barrie Baycats organization. Josh was looking for some imports. We started talking. I sent him a few guys, and then it kind of just went from there. Of course, originally he wanted to bring me on as a broadcaster, having been the voice of the team in 2017, and then helping out a little bit in 18 and 19. But I've always been interested in doing player side of things. Thinking back to when I was a kid, I'm always playing, be a GM on the computer or NHL franchise mode or MLB franchise mode. And so I said, I thought it'd be cool. I was kind of already helping out. And that kind of got the ball rolling there. But like I said, it's kind of, my job is to take a little bit of the pressure off Josh, deal a little bit more with the player transactions while he focuses on the marketing side, while also helping out with the player stuff as well.
Now, you have a pretty interesting, unique path. As mentioned, you came up kind of through media and then, kind of branched into baseball ops. So, kind of tell us a little more about maybe your interest for this gig, your passion for it. When you got into media, did you think you were eventually going to transition into a baseball operations type of thing? Or did you think you wanted to, call Blue Jays games one day?
I still do want to be a broadcaster. I still want to, broadcast. My dream would be to broadcast Blue Jays games on the radio. I still have a passion for broadcasting, but of course, with the pandemic and very little opportunities in baseball and very little opportunities in baseball in Canada, as you know, Jackson. Of course, our citizenship doesn't necessarily help us. Most of the opportunities are in the United States, not too many opportunities in Canada. So, I wasn't really doing much. I was working in junior hockey, lost my gig there, came back home to Ottawa. I was working in BC, and I just kind of wanted to do something. And the opportunity kind of came about itself from talking to Ryan Eakin and talking from Josh Matlow. And I already had, a previous connection with the organization. So it just kind of, fell into itself. But I still want to be a broadcaster. I still enjoyed that. But just to go back to your question, in 2017, being an intern with the Toronto Blue Jays, and in 2018, working for the Lansing Lugnets as a number 2 broadcaster, I was always super interested in, mechanics and scouting guys and talking to players, talking to coaches. I was always, talking to different front office personnel. I remember, as an intern with the Blue Jays, I was glued to talking to Mark Shapiro. I just wanted to be a sponge around him. So I really enjoyed learning from guys like him. I in the press box, I was always going up to scouts and saying, "Hey, you got to look at this guy. This guy's good. This, and that." And then, when I was working for the Ottawa Champions in 2019 as the broadcaster, I knew guys that had been released from minor league baseball, and of course, they're an independent league. And I was always in the manager's ear saying, "Hey, I know a guy. You got to give him a chance. You got to sign him." Or I was even in IBL teams' ears saying, "Hey, you got to give this guy a chance." I don't know how many times I was emailing or trying to talk to Angus, the previous manager, saying, "Hey, I know a guy who was released." So I always thought about that because I was always bugging managers about, hey, I know this guy, he can pitch, he can hit. And I just thought it'd be a cool opportunity for sure.
You talk about the opportunity, especially north of the border, right? And maybe talk a little bit. You talk about, talking to Mark Shapiro, some of the scouts, their support. How open were they with you, sort of supportive with you, and just how much did that help you as an intern to learn about not just the media but also baseball operations?
Well, I do want to give a huge shout out to the people that I worked under in the Jays PR department that season, who unfortunately are no longer with them. One of them, the guy that I interned with, Rodney, he's doing a fantastic job. He's still with the PR department, and he's worked his way up. So a huge shout out to him. Tons of respect for Rodney. But I got to thank Jay Stenhouse, Mal Roman, and Sue Malbon, and Eric Grossman, the four that I worked under in that department, because I was 19. And I was very immature. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I was very overwhelmed. I was way over my head, and they brought me down to earth. They showed me the ins and outs, but also, getting the opportunity to talk to Mark Shapiro. I think maybe I went into his office 5 times during that year, and he remembered my name every single time. He made me feel at home. I ran into him at the 2018 winter meetings again, and he still remembered my name. In fact, people were coming up to me at the winter meeting saying, "Hey, Dante," a couple of scouts that I had connected with, and they said, "Hey, you got to come. We're having a Blue Jays dinner. It was in Las Vegas. You got to come out." And Mark was there, and he came and shook my hand. And he said, "I heard you in Lansing. I just wanted to know how that went." And he was super happy that me having an internship with Big Club led to another opportunity, which was with the Lansing Lugnuts. So, guys like him, I was a sponge around them. Even, running, walking past Ross Atkins in the front office, he was super respectful. I know a lot of Jays fans, they can say what they want about Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, but they are two of the greatest guys that I've ever had the opportunity to be around. And I was around them for a very short period of time, but tons of respect for those guys. And I mean, there's so many, TJ Burden's another guy that I had the opportunity to act as a sponge around. So many other scouts. The list goes on and on. But I mean, I could talk for hours about, the people that I had the opportunity to learn from with the Jays organization, and I can't thank them enough.
What would be your advice, right, to someone who's kind of trying to, maybe they're not sure if they want to do media necessarily, or maybe they do want to get into a front office one day in any sport? What would be your advice to someone who's kind of on the fence but wants to be a part of it in some way?
Honestly, it's so hard, but I wouldn't start in the big leagues, especially at the age of 19. Because, it was super overwhelming, walking into that Jays clubhouse and standing beside Russell Martin and standing beside Josh Donaldson. These are the guys that I'd idolized, of course, and especially Jose Bautista and, John Gibbons, and the list goes on. And Robbie Alomar walking, seeing him walk through your office was just super overwhelming. So I say, start small and kind of let the chips fall where they may. I started off in broadcasting. I started off as as an unpaid intern with the Ottawa Champions in 2016, calling their games. I was, honored to be a billet family for 2 players that season. One of them, who is one of my best friends now. I learned a lot from those guys that my mom and I billeted. So just let the chips fall where they may. Start off small, gain some confidence, and then work your way up. Obviously, make connections and just act as a sponge. My biggest piece of advice is just to less talking, more listening, and that's one thing that I didn't necessarily do when I got into the business as an 18-year-old, but I learned that quickly, especially once I got to the Blue Jays. And like I said, just let the chips fall when they may, and don't force anything. Once the opportunities arise, if you think that you're ready for that opportunity, start small and then work your way up. And I think the IBL is a great place for young individuals like yourself and like myself to get their start and work their way up.
Now, sounds like you're pretty good at networking. How do you build trust, not just with, people in a front office, but also with players, right? Or members of the media, whatever it is. How do you sort of are able to kind of have that rapport with someone naturally and be able to get over maybe some of the surreal factors of, talking to Mark Shapiro, but not wanting to also embarrass yourself about it?
I don't know. Like, I mean, people have always asked me that question, but I haven't really been able to answer it sincerely because it almost comes natural. A lot of people would always say, Dante has no fear. He'll go talk to anybody, right? And I remember in 2017, we had a Blue Jay staff meeting where they were talking about the farm system. They were talking about how the team was performing, their plans going forward. I remember they were talking about, renovations to the stadium, and they allowed the staff to Q&A with Mark. and Ross, and no one in the crowd, none of the staff members, decided to ask a question. And I was the first person to raise my hand and say, I'll ask a question. I ended up asking a question about Danny Jansen, who was tearing up AA at the time. I think when I was 17, 18 years old, when I first started, I was a little bit timid. I was a little bit scared, but I said, if you want to make it in this business, you have to have a no fear mentality. You have to take risks, and I'm not afraid about taking risks. Sometimes you're not going to please everybody, and you have to have that mentality. So in terms of building connections, one thing that I've done over the years is learned a little bit of Spanish, and that's why we haven't really had any issues bringing in Latin imports to the Barrie Baycats for the upcoming season. So another thing that helped me is how I was roommates with so many different players. Like I said, it was a billet family for 2 years in Ottawa. And then in Lansing, I had a great billet family where I lived with Danny Jimenez and Claudio Custodio, former Baycat, and Jimenez is on the 40-man roster with the Oakland Athletics, played in the big leagues with the San Francisco Giants for a game last year, struck out Mookie Betts. So I think having that connection with those players, living with them, definitely helped working with a lot of other players. So it was kind of easy on that part. And, I don't really force it. I just kind of let it come to me.
Right. Some very interesting stuff and some really good advice there, Dante. We're going to throw to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss the Barrie Baycats.
Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't let me in. Yeah. Can't answer my phone now. Just leave it there. That tone. Ballin' can't beat me up 'cause I'm back in my zone now. 'Cause I'm back in my zone now.
All right, welcome back. IBL on deck. Jackson Farough and Dante De Caria with you. So, Dante, your first offseason in Barrie now. How has it gone so far? Has anything surprised you about being in baseball operations?
Oh, a lot has surprised me. And, when I was first brought in, I was brought in to bring in some imports. And then I was dipping my toes into trying to get some Canadian guys that I knew, Canadian guys that had big league experience, Canadian guys that had AAA experience. And I thought it was going to be easy because I had built that rapport with them over the years. It wasn't that easy. A lot of these guys moved on. A lot of them still think they can play or still can play at that, at that high level of independent baseball or AA or AAA baseball. So that was a little bit different. It was a little bit harder than what I expected. Also, I knew a lot of guys in the GTA that had professional baseball experience that I'd become friends with over the years, and they were done playing and stuff like that. But in terms of, the Latin side, it's, the imports, it's been kind of fun. I had the opportunity to bring in a close friend of mine, and Andres Sotil, who's going to be our starting catcher this season. I had the opportunity to work with him in 2018 when he was the Lansing Lugnets catcher. And I always knew he had potential just because he wasn't really given the opportunity, but I saw that ability in batting practice and in the cage, and he's a super down-to-earth guy. And unfortunately, you have those depth catchers in the organization who are never really given that opportunity. They're brought onto the roster as a phantom DL guy and brought, into the lineup when one of their prospect catchers gets hurt or he needs time off. And so Teal most of the time was catching in the bullpen, but every time I watched him in batting practice, he hit well. He had a little bit of pop. He calls a really good game, but also when he was given the chance to hit, he hit. I mean, you're talking about an on-base percentage above 360 that season. He was just a professional guy, professional catcher. And I remember talking to our bench coach that season, and we were going to the playoffs, and I asked him, what's the key? And he said, Andres Sotil is the key if we want to win this playoff series. We faced the Rays team. My God, they were absolutely loaded. They killed us in 2 games. And then, the other guy that I had the opportunity to bring in, Jason Aquino, big league experience. He comes to us as a leader, a guy that's going to be at the top of our rotation. And he fell onto my lap just based off having a connection with his agent. And, I can't thank his agent enough for kind of, sending him to us. And like I said, I talked about this on our Baycats podcast, but my goal is to move these players on, just like Claudio did a couple of years ago, going from the Baycats to the minor leagues, now AAA with the Baltimore Orioles. And so my pitch to Jason was, come play for us, but this isn't the end of the line. You're 27 years old. You play in the big leagues. You've had experience. You've been out of baseball for 1.5 to 2 years, obviously due to the pandemic. Come here, dominate, and we'll try to get you an opportunity, whether it's an affiliated ball or in another professional league.
Now, you touched on it. I was going to ask you kind of how does that recruitment process go? You sort of answered it. The sales pitch is, come here, get good, get better, get noticed, and then you can go off and do great things elsewhere. In terms of sort of the reaching out process, obviously, a lot of these guys, their agents, whatever. Is it sort of just a text like, ever heard of the IBL? Or how does it kind of go in terms of first reaching out and establishing that sort of rapport?
It's not that easy because a lot of these guys don't really know a lot about the league. They go,
right.
Okay, tell me about the league. And I say 36 games. And these guys are used to 150, 140 games, right? Because that's what they play in the minor leagues and independent professional baseball. They play 100 games. And so they're like, 36 games, like, how am I going to stay ready? And that's the tough thing about the Intercounty Baseball League is a lot of these guys come here and sometimes they take a little bit of adjusting because you're only playing 3 times a week. You're not getting those reps every day. You're not necessarily hitting in the cage every day. You're not throwing every day. And so it's a lot harder to sit at home and, whether it's work another job or, kind of, I guess, play video games, do something to pass time, work out, and then you're thrown right into the fire on a Friday night. And you're asked to throw 7 innings that night, or you're asked to go 3 for 4 with a home run or something like that, right? Yeah. So it takes a little bit of adjusting for guys that come straight to the league. But yeah, sales pitches for me is just based off my connections, and is that I'm not going to screw you over 100%. That my goal is not for you to come here and stay here the rest of your career. If you have that opportunity to move on, whether it's next season or the season after, we are more than happy to move you on, because I think it's good for the league. More players, it's going to improve the baseball in the league, but it's also it's going to improve the recruiting process, right? If a lot of the time I was telling, hey, we had Frank Garces here a couple years ago. He went on and played in Mexico after dominating with a .38 ERA. We had Claudio Custodio, who ended up being signed by the Blue Jays. Then he went to the Braves, and now he's with the Orioles. He's throwing 99 miles an hour, right? He came to the IBL having really not pitched before. He was a hitter. He was a two-way player in the IBL. And the Blue Jay scouts saw him, and they fell in love with him. So that's number one. My number one pitch is I always name drop Claudio. I always name drop Frank Garces. Because I want guys to know that we care about them. Not only as a player, we're going to take care of them, and we're going to try to move them on.
Right. So using those examples almost to build trust and sort of to show, hey, here's the rep we've established. You talk, I say reputation, Barrie's got quite the championship reputation, right? Championships for the last 6 seasons, looking to make it, a 7th straight in 2021. You joining the team now in the front office, is there a unique type of pressure with the team winning so much to kind of keep it moving forward?
I guess you could say that there is some pressure, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't focus on any of the other teams. I focus on our team, right? I obviously we're focused on winning, but I'm super excited about this upcoming season in June, just because, yes, you lose Kyle DeGrace, yes, you lose Kevin Atkinson, but now you got younger players, and we're still trying to rebuild that dynasty or tinker with the roster. It's an opportunity for these young guys, local guys like Ryan Rio and Cole White to come in and prove themselves, do exactly what Ryan Spataro did, do exactly what Brad Bissell did over the course of his Baycats career. And then for Josh, my God, you talk about pressure. This is like the pressure's not on me, right? I think Josh has done a fantastic job, but I think Josh filling the shoes of Angus Roy is definitely tough, but I think he's done a really good job bringing in, guys like Riley McDonald, guys like Royce Ando, Millar, the list goes on and on. Guys, young guys that are going to be with this team for years to come, but also have an opportunity to move on. So, like I said, I think both Josh and I's goal is to not only win, but also to move guys on. And yes, there is a little bit of pressure of winning that 7 straight because it hadn't been done before. Brantford had gone to 6. We've already tied their record. But you know what? The league is really good. Welland's good. Hamilton's good. I think Brantford's going to surprise some teams this year. Roop's London majors are always, very competitive. Guelph, they got Sean Riley and they can hit, and who knows who they bring in with their imports. So it's, Toronto can hit as well. Like it's such a good league, and especially with more, much better imports coming in and more Canadians recognizing this league as a place to play. It's not going to be a cakewalk for the Baycats this season.
Now, what aspect of this Baycats team, as it sort of takes shape, is their biggest strength? And what do you think, the biggest weaknesses, or not necessarily a weakness, but sort of maybe an area of the roster you're still looking to improve upon?
I'll start off the weakness. I think we need a little bit of work in the outfield. We have some young guys that could flourish into roles. But I think we're looking for a center fielder. Branfield Fontaine, Jeff Cowan are veterans. They've been with the Baycats over the course of the 6 championships, legendary top 100 IBL players as they were named a couple of years ago. They're more corner guys in my opinion. So we're still looking for a center fielder. We're still looking to improve our speed. We have some power. Of course, we brought in Riley McDonald, who has some pro experience. You're talking about a guy that could hit at least, a dozen home runs in the IBL this season. As for our biggest strength, when I came in, I wanted to improve the pitching. And I think by bringing in Jason Aquino, that does that. I think, bringing in a young pitcher like Millard does that. I think bringing in a guy like Jaspreet Shergill, who had played for the team in the past as a closer, has some professional experience, played in Australia. I was watching some of his bullpen sessions on Facebook the other day. He's like 91, 92 overhand. And then he's got a sinker that comes down submarine. So he's going to be a front end starter. I think our pitching staff is going to be really good. Our bullpen could be questionable, but I still like some of the arms that we have back there. Again, it's a really young team. So I'm expecting guys like Cole White to step it up, Millard to step it up, at the back end of the rotation. I do think our hitting is also strength as well. I know I mentioned the outfield's a little bit weak, but the infield's strong. You got, Starlin Rodriguez, who's one of the top maybe 10 players in the IBL, position players at least. He can play both outfield and infield, most likely going to play second or short this season. Royce Ando has been really good at, Michigan State University. I had the opportunity to watch him when the Lugnets in Michigan State played an exhibition game, so I'm really excited about him. Riley McDonald, has versatility, can play third, can play catcher, first, second, and the outfield. And then, of course, Ryan Real has not hit a home run since 2017. I'm really looking at Ryan Real to kind of step it up this season. He's hit for average. He's, top 10 in doubles last season, but I wanted to see him hit the ball out of the ballpark. So the hitting's a strength. Outfield needs a little bit of work, and I really like our pitching staff.
If you were a fan of the Barrie Baycats, or maybe to talk to fans of the Barrie Baycats, what's something that they should really be looking forward to the most about the 2021 IBL season as it pertains to Barrie?
I think they should be really looking forward to seeing Josh at the helm for the first time. I really feel bad for Josh because he should have been having his rookie season done with last year. And because of the pandemic, it gets carried over this year. I think for all the volunteers and all the fans, they're used to Angus Roy. They're obviously going to see Mills there and Gary Yansky and the rest of the ownership group and maybe myself and Ryan. But I think they should be excited about seeing some young ball players, becoming fans of some of the young players that are going to be with the team as we build a quote unquote new dynasty that we think will be together for years to come, but also to see some of the things that Josh has done. I mean, I'm not really involved too much with a lot of the marketing stuff, but from afar, maybe I shouldn't say afar, but from talking to him briefly, he's done an absolutely unbelievable job. You're talking about getting tickets online, which is a huge plus, especially, in 2021. That is massive. Right, the friendly face that he brings to the ballpark. I mean, he's one of the better guys that I've had the opportunity to be around. So just coming to the ballpark and seeing some new promotions, some new stuff that they kind of have lined up for this season. There is lots coming, a lot of stuff that hasn't been announced yet. So I'll leave it to the team and Josh to do that. But just the new faces and just seeing some new improvements for this upcoming season.
And as we begin to wrap up the show, looks like we have a fan question here for Dante from Matt Wilson. Question for Dante: how hard has it been being in an IBL front office during the pandemic? Great question.
I mean, there's a ton of question marks. The hardest part about that is obviously the IBL had announced that we're starting in June, but you just never know with COVID-19, and this is something it's bigger than baseball, right? And so, joining the front office, joining the team in October, we're always, going back and forth. When are we going to play? A lot of the players were asking, when are we going to play? And now with the quarantine rules, it's a little bit more difficult, trying to bring in some Latin players, especially, I can attest to, our Venezuelan catcher, Andres Sotillo. This is a guy that, he can't, there's no COVID testing station close to him, right? So he has to get there, get tested, come here, then they got to quarantine for 2 weeks. So that's been a little bit difficult, but it's also been difficult recruiting Canadian players. There's been so many guys, guys from out east, from out west, that just want to kind of stay home and play in their local league rather than playing in the IBL. And if you talk to guys out east, they say, well, I don't want to leave out east. There's no COVID here. Everything's normal. So, and then there's also guys that haven't thrown in a year. And so they're, questioning their body, questioning if they can get to a facility and start getting ready. I think for pitchers, it's difficult. For hitters, it's not as much difficult because it's all about rhythm and timing. You can just get into the cage. But especially guys in the GTA, with the lockdown, all the facilities were closed. All the gyms were closed. So guys started getting out of shape. Guys were questioning, maybe it's not okay for me to play this season because, they're focusing more on work. Obviously, my job's lost and also their physical health as well, which is important to them. So it's been a huge challenge, 100%.
Well, yeah, you mentioned it. Real life really kind of takes the big part of people's lives now. It's not just about baseball anymore. You've got families to take care of, stuff like that. One last question for you here, Dante. Looking to the future now, kind of going to put you on the spot here. In terms of the IBL, if you were commissioner, let's say you got named commissioner tomorrow, what would you focus on to position this league to be best positioned for the future? Putting you on the spot.
I can go so many different ways here. I think you gotta expand, right? More teams, right? Baseball is becoming more and more popular in Canada, and you got to give credit to the Toronto Blue Jays and what they've done on the marketing side of things. I think they've done a tremendous job, but I think expanding. I'm going to sit here and say this. I went to Ottawa Fat Cats games as a kid, and I really enjoyed watching, the Brantford Red Sox and the Barrie Baycats come to town and play the Fat Cats, and we had 6,000-7,000 people a game. I know they have a pro team right now, but I would love to see an IBL team back in Ottawa. But I think expansion is the number one thing. Obviously, there's rumors on different cities that you can go to, but if you look, you were talking with Thompson a couple of weeks ago. Stratford was a team, right? There's so many different cities that you can expand to, and I think there's enough talent, right? Maybe for the first 2 years it might get a little watered down. But I think it would build itself back up. More teams, more opportunities, more imports coming in. If you look across the league, how many veteran, former big league guys are around the IBL? So I think as commissioner, the first thing that I would do would be to expand. And I think Cash is trying to do that. But other than that, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, my goodness, the marketing has been fantastic over the last, let's say, 5 years 3-5 years since I've been around the league. And I think you put me on the spot there, so it's tough for me to answer, but I think expansion, the more teams, the better for me.
Absolutely. Well, Dante, we really appreciate you joining us today to talk about your career as well as just the Barrie Baycats in general. Thanks so much for joining us, and maybe we'll do this again down the road. All
right. Appreciate it, Jackson.
All right, and that wraps up our episode on the Barrie Baycats on IBL On Deck. So for Jackson Farough, Dante De Caria, the IBL and the IBL On Deck, sponsored by Rawlings production team. A couple weeks from now, we're going to be discussing the Brantford Red Sox. So look forward to that. And for now, have a great evening.